Blood flowed across the wooden floors of the trading post as Willow Adams struggled to contain her mother's bleeding, her desperate cries for help drowned by the retreating hoofbeats of the men who had left her mother dying in 1876 Hot Springs, South Dakota. At 18, Willow had witnessed the culmination of hatred that had followed her since birth, too Indian for the white settlers, too white for her mother's Comanche people. Her mother, Morning Star, had been deemed a traitor by both sides for loving a white man and for birthing a child who belonged nowhere. "Stay strong, my little wolf," Morning Star whispered in Comanche, her breathing shallow as life drained from her body. "You must find your path where others see none." "Don't leave me," Willow begged, pressing cloth against the wound. Her mother's dark eyes, identical to her own, held a lifetime of wisdom in their fading light. "The land will guide you when people will not," Morning Star said before drawing her final breath. Willow's scream of anguish echoed through the empty trading post. She was now truly alone. Her father had abandoned them years ago, returning to the east with promises to send for them that never materialized. Her mother's Comanche family had disowned her, and the white townspeople of Hot Springs regarded her with suspicion and disdain. That night, Willow buried her mother on a hill overlooking the valley, according to Comanche tradition, with items she would need for her journey to the afterlife. Her tears had dried, replaced by a hollow emptiness that threatened to consume her. She had nowhere to go, no one who would take her in. The next morning, Willow returned to the trading post. Mr. Jenkins, the owner who had employed her mother as a translator and clerk, had always been fair if not particularly warm. "I'm sorry about your mother, girl," he said gruffly. "She was a fine worker. May I continue her position?" Willow asked, her chin held high despite her grief. Her mother had taught her English and educated her from books, giving her an advantage many in the territory lacked. Jenkins eyed her warily. "Folks won't like dealing with a half-breed." "I speak 3 languages," Willow replied evenly. "And I can write and keep accounts better than most men in this territory." Jenkins sighed heavily. "You can stay in the back room and help with inventory. When customers come in, make yourself scarce. That's the best I can do." It wasn't much, but it was shelter and work. Willow accepted with a grateful nod, knowing this tenuous arrangement was her only option. For 3 months, Willow lived like a ghost in the trading post. She organized inventory, kept the books, and melted away when customers appeared. She learned to move silently to become invisible. At night, she would walk to the hill where her mother lay and speak to her in Comanche, the language that felt increasingly foreign on her tongue with each passing day. The situation might have continued indefinitely if not for the arrival of Samuel Everett. Samuel rode into Hot Springs on a day when the summer heat made the air shimmer above the dusty street. His stallion was a magnificent animal, well-bred and well cared for, unlike the usual trail-worn horses that passed through. Willow watched from the window as he dismounted with fluid grace, his movements suggesting a man comfortable in his own skin. He was tall, with shoulders broadened by years of physical labor, but he carried himself with the confidence of an educated man. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way that made Willow's heart flutter unexpectedly. She guessed him to be in his late 20s. When he entered the trading post, the little bell above the door signaling his arrival, Willow immediately retreated to the storeroom as instructed. Through the crack in the door, she observed him as he approached Jenkins. "Afternoon," Samuel said, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "I'm looking for land to purchase. Heard there might be some available in these parts." Jenkins perked up at the prospect of business. "Indeed there is, sir. Homestead claims opening up just north of town. Good water access, fertile soil. You looking to ranch?" "Something like that," Samuel replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm also in need of supplies and information about the area." As Jenkins pulled out maps and began extolling the virtues of the territory, Willow accidentally knocked over a crate of canned goods. The noise drew both men's attention to the storeroom door. "Who's back there?" Samuel asked, his hand instinctively moving toward his holster. "Just my assistant," Jenkins replied nervously. "Willow, come out here and help with these maps." Reluctantly, Willow emerged from the storeroom, her eyes downcast, bracing herself for the familiar look of disgust or disdain. Instead, when she glanced up, Samuel was regarding her with simple curiosity. "Miss," he acknowledged with a nod. Jenkins quickly intervened. "She helps with the books and inventory, smart girl but keeps to herself." Samuel's gaze lingered on Willow's face. She knew what he saw, a strange combination of features that marked her as neither fully white nor fully Comanche. Her skin was a shade darker than most white women's, her high cheekbones and straight nose clearly Comanche, while her slightly wavy black hair and height came from her father. "These maps are outdated," Willow said quietly, unable to stop herself. "The creek he's showing you dried up last season, and the Anderson claim had soil problems nothing would grow." Jenkins shot her a warning look, but Samuel's expression brightened with interest. "Is that so?" he asked. "What would you recommend instead?" Jenkins tried to interject, but Samuel held up his hand. "I'd like to hear what the lady has to say." No one had ever called her a lady before. Willow swallowed hard, then pointed to a different area on the map. "This ridge has natural protection from the north winds, good water from an underground spring, and soil that's growing wild strawberries. If berries grow wild, other things will grow with care." Samuel studied her face, then the map. "And how do you know this?" "I walk," Willow answered simply. "I observe. She's half Indian," Jenkins blurted out, as if this explained everything. "Comanche mother." Samuel's expression didn't change. "I asked about her knowledge of the land, not her parentage." The simple statement, delivered without heat but with unmistakable rebuke, made Jenkins flush and Willow's eyes widen in surprise. "I'd like to see this ridge," Samuel said, addressing Willow directly. "Would you be willing to show me tomorrow?" Before she could respond, Jenkins cut in. "Now see here, Mr. Everett. It wouldn't be proper. I'll pay for her time as a guide," Samuel said firmly. "And yours as a chaperone, if propriety is your concern." Jenkins sputtered, caught between the prospect of additional income and the impropriety of the arrangement. "I can show you," Willow said softly, finding her voice. "At dawn, before the store opens." Samuel nodded. "Dawn it is." He turned back to Jenkins. "Now about those supplies." That night Willow couldn't sleep. She visited her mother's grave, speaking in rapid Comanche about the strange man who had looked at her as if she were simply a person, not a half-breed curiosity. "What does he want, Mother?" she whispered to the stars. "No one sees me unless they want something." The night wind provided no answers, but for the first time since her mother's death, Willow felt a flicker of something other than grief and isolation. Dawn broke with the promise of another scorching day. Willow dressed carefully in her most serviceable skirt and blouse, braiding her hair in a single plait down her back. She wore moccasins rather than boots, better for the terrain they would traverse. Samuel was waiting outside the trading post when she emerged, his horse saddled and ready. He had a second horse with him, a gentle-looking mare. "Good morning, Miss Adams," he said. "I took the liberty of borrowing a mount for you from the livery." Willow hesitated. "I usually walk." "It's several miles to the ridge, isn't it?" She nodded reluctantly. "Then riding seems sensible," he said matter-of-factly. "Can you ride?" "Yes." Her mother had taught her on the rare occasions they visited her Comanche relatives during her early childhood before the final rejection. Samuel offered his hand to help her mount, but Willow ignored it, swinging into the saddle with practiced ease. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth as he mounted his own horse. They rode in silence for the first mile, Willow leading the way along trails visible only to those who knew what to look for. Finally, Samuel spoke. "How long have you lived in Hot Springs?" "All my life," Willow replied. 18 years, and you work for Jenkins." "Since my mother died." 3 months ago." Samuel's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry for your loss, Willow nodded, unaccustomed to such sincere condolences. Most people in town had responded to news of Morning Star's death with commentary about one less Indian to worry about. May I ask what happened to her? Willow stiffened. She was killed. Some men didn't like that she was Comanche and in their town. Samuel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing for a long moment. And your father, gone, back east somewhere. She didn't elaborate on his promises to return, his letters that grew less frequent before stopping altogether. They reached a small stream, pausing to let the horses drink. And you, what brought you to Hot Springs? Willow asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Samuel gazed out at the horizon. A fresh start. I was a captain in the Union Army, then tried my hand at law in Chicago. Neither suited me in the end. Why here? Far enough from civilization to build something new, close enough to a town for necessities. He turned to look directly at her. I don't much care for crowds or society's expectations. Something in his tone resonated with Willow, but she remained cautious. She'd learned early that white men's interest in Half-Comanche girls was rarely honorable. They continued riding, eventually reaching the ridge Willow had described. It was indeed a beautiful spot, with a natural bowl formation protected by hills on three sides, a clear spring bubbling from rocks, and wild strawberries growing in patches near the water. Samuel dismounted and explored the area thoroughly, examining the soil, testing the water, studying the lay of the land. Willow remained on her horse, watching him. You were right, he finally said, looking up at her. This is perfect. For what? She asked. A home. A ranch eventually. He gestured broadly. Room to breathe. Land that will give back what you put into it. Something in his vision stirred a longing in Willow. She'd long suppressed the desire for a place that was truly hers, where she belonged. Are you hungry? Samuel asked, breaking into her thoughts. He pulled out a bundle from his saddlebag. I brought food, thought we might have a meal before heading back. They sat by the spring, sharing bread, cheese, and dried apples. Samuel asked questions about the local plants, the weather patterns, the wildlife. Willow found herself answering easily, sharing knowledge her mother had taught her about living with the land rather than merely on it. You know more about this territory than anyone I've met so far, Samuel observed. Jenkins doesn't appreciate what he has in you. Willow shrugged. He gave me work when no one else would. Is that enough, to be tolerated? The question pierced her carefully constructed defenses. What choice do I have? I'm Half-Comanche. Nobody wants me in either world. Samuel considered her for a long moment. What if you had another choice? Before Willow could ask what he meant, they were interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. 3 riders appeared on the ridge above them, looking down with obvious displeasure. Well, look what we have here, called the leader, a man Willow recognized as George Wilson, one of the town's most vocal critics of any indigenous presence. Jenkins' little squaw showing a newcomer around. Willow froze, but Samuel rose slowly to his feet, his posture relaxed but somehow alert. Gentlemen, he said calmly, I hired Miss Adams as a guide to potential homestead land. Is there a problem? Wilson sneered. Problem is we don't need her kind encouraging more of her people around here. Bad enough we got to tolerate her in town. Her kind. Samuel's voice remained even, but Willow noticed his hand had moved closer to his holster. You mean knowledgeable local guides? You know damn well what I mean, Wilson spat. Her mother caused nothing but trouble, spreading Indian ways, probably spying for her people. Got what was coming to her. Willow stood abruptly, her face flushing with anger. My mother was a translator. She helped your wife birth your son when no one else was around. Shut your mouth, Wilson snarled, his hand moving to his gun. In one fluid motion, Samuel stepped in front of Willow, his own gun drawn with startling speed. I wouldn't, he said softly, his voice carrying easily in the sudden silence. Miss Adams is under my employment and protection. We're simply exploring land I intend to purchase. Wilson's face reddened with fury, but he wasn't foolish enough to draw against Samuel's already aimed weapon. You new in town, mister. You don't understand how things work here. I understand perfectly, Samuel replied. Now, I suggest you and your friends continue your ride elsewhere. Miss Adams and I have business to complete. For a tense moment, Willow thought Wilson might risk a shot anyway, but eventually he jerked his head at his companions. Let's go, he'll learn soon enough. After they'd ridden away, Willow released the breath she'd been holding. You shouldn't have done that. Samuel holstered his gun with practiced ease. Done what? Prevented a murder, made yourself a target. They won't forget this. Neither will I, Samuel said grimly. Was he one of them? The men who killed your mother? Willow looked away. I don't know. I didn't see their faces, but he never made a secret of hating her. Samuel's jaw tightened. We should head back. It's not safe here now. They rode in tense silence, taking a different route to avoid encountering Wilson and his friends again. As they approached the trading post, Samuel finally spoke. I meant what I asked earlier, about having another choice. Willow looked at him warily. What choice? I need someone who knows this land, who can help me build something here. I'll pay you fairly better than Jenkins does, I'd wager. Willow stared at him, trying to decipher his true intentions. As what? Your servant? As my land manager, Samuel said firmly. I know how to build, how to plan, but I don't know this territory. You do, it would be a business arrangement. No one would accept that. A white man employing a half-Comanche woman. They'd assume. I don't particularly care what they'd assume, Samuel interrupted. I've spent too many years caring about what others think. It brought me nothing but misery. They had reached the trading post. Samuel dismounted and came around to help Willow down from her horse. This time, she accepted his hand, the brief contact sending an unexpected warmth through her. Think about it, he said quietly. I'll be staying at the hotel in town while I make arrangements to purchase the land. Let me know your decision within the week. As he turned to leave, Willow called after him. Why would you want to help me? Samuel looked back, his expression serious. I recognize someone who doesn't fit in the world they were born into. I've been that person. He paused. Besides, it's not charity. You have knowledge I need. That night, Willow visited her mother's grave again, more confused than ever. He offers me work, Mother, real work using what you taught me, but can I trust him? No white man has ever seen me as valuable before. The stars offered no clearer guidance than the night before, but as Willow made her way back to her small room behind the trading post, her mind was racing with possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. The next morning, Jenkins confronted her as soon as she arrived to open the store. What did you do with that Everett fellow yesterday? He demanded. I showed him the ridge north of Willow Creek as he asked, she replied evenly. Well, Wilson and his boys are saying otherwise. Saying you bewitched him with Indian magic, turned him against decent folks, Willow sighed. We encountered Mr. Wilson while examining the land. He was discourteous. Discourteous, Jenkins repeated with a snort. Girl, you're causing me trouble. Bad for business having you here if Wilson and his friends start boycotting the store. I've increased your profits by 15% since taking over the bookkeeping, Willow pointed out. That don't matter if folks won't come in. Jenkins ran a hand through his thinning hair. Look, I did right by your mother giving you a place, but I can't afford this kind of trouble. Are you dismissing me? Willow asked, her heart sinking despite having anticipated this outcome. Jenkins wouldn't meet her eyes. Giving you fair warning. Find somewhere else, or be more invisible than you already are. Willow nodded stiffly and went about her duties, her mind made up. At noon, when Jenkins left for his usual meal at the town's small restaurant, she slipped out and headed toward the hotel. She found Samuel in the hotel's modest dining room, papers spread before him as he ate. He looked up in surprise when she approached his table. Miss Adams, he greeted her, standing quickly. Please join me. Your offer, she said without preamble, does it still stand? Samuel studied her face. Something happened. Jenkins is letting me go. Wilson is making trouble. Samuel gestured to the chair across from him. Sit, please. Have you eaten? Willow shook her head but remained standing. I don't want charity, Mr. Everett. If your offer was genuine about needing my knowledge of the land, then I accept, but I want clear terms. A smile spread across Samuel's face. Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less. He pulled out a chair for her. Please sit and eat something while we discuss those terms. Reluctantly, Willow sat. Samuel signaled a waitress who approached warily, eyeing Willow with suspicion. Another plate of the stew for the lady, please, Samuel requested. She can't eat in here, the waitress said flatly. Samuel's expression cooled. Miss Adams is my business associate. Either she eats here with me or I take my considerable business elsewhere. Your choice. The waitress glanced nervously toward the kitchen, then nodded stiffly and left to fetch the food. You'll face more of that if you employ me, Willow warned. I'm aware, Samuel replied. Now, let's discuss terms. I intend to purchase the land we visited yesterday and build a home and eventually a working ranch. I need someone who knows the land, the weather patterns, what will grow and what won't. Someone who can help me avoid the mistakes newcomers typically make. And you think I can do that? I know you can. Your knowledge yesterday impressed me. You noticed things I would have missed. The waitress returned with a bowl of stew, practically dropping it in front of Willow before hurrying away. What exactly would my duties include? Willow asked, cautiously tasting the stew. Initially, helping me plan the building and planting. Later, managing the growing of crops and eventually livestock. I'll handle the construction and business dealings in town. Where would I live? I'll build separate quarters for you on the property, Samuel said. Until then, I can arrange temporary lodging. People will talk, Willow warned again. Samuel shrugged. People always talk. I'm more concerned with building something worthwhile than with wagging tongues. They spent the next hour negotiating terms. Samuel offered a fair wage, considerably more than Jenkins had paid, plus a percentage of future profits from the ranch. Willow would have her own cabin on the property, complete independence in her personal affairs, and clearly defined duties. When do we start? Willow asked after they had reached an agreement. I'm finalizing the land purchase tomorrow. We can begin clearing the building site immediately after. Willow nodded, a strange mix of excitement and apprehension filling her. I have few possessions. I can be ready whenever you need me, Samuel smiled. Then we have a deal, Miss Adams. Willow, she corrected him. If we're to work together, you should call me Willow. Willow, he repeated, the name sounding different in his deep voice. And I'm Samuel. Word of their arrangement spread through Hot Springs like wildfire. When Willow returned to the trading post to collect her meager belongings, Jenkins was apoplectic. You're going to live on his land. Have you lost your mind, girl? You know what people will think. They already think the worst of me, Willow replied calmly, packing her mother's few treasures: a beaded necklace, a small mirror, a worn Bible with pressed flowers between its pages. At least this way I'll have honest work and a place of my own. Jenkins shook his head. Your mother would be ashamed. Willow straightened, fixing him with a hard stare. My mother taught me to survive in a world that has no place for me. She would understand. 2 days later, Willow found herself standing on the ridge that would become her new home. Samuel had arranged for a wagon of supplies and hired 4 men from a nearby settlement to help with the initial clearing and building. These men, unlike Wilson and his friends, seemed indifferent to Willow's heritage, concerned only with the work and the pay. Samuel had set up 2 tents, a larger one for himself and the men, and a smaller one for Willow, positioned a respectable distance away but within sight. We'll build your cabin first, he explained as they surveyed the land together. Here, near the spring but on higher ground for when the snow melts. The main house should be there, Willow pointed to a natural plateau overlooking the valley. Morning sun but afternoon shade from those trees. Samuel nodded, making notes in a small book. You know about building. My mother and I built our home when I was a child, before we moved to town. Willow gazed at the landscape, memory washing over her. It was small, but it stood against 3 winters. Where was it? South of here, near the Cheyenne River. The army burned it when they cleared the area for settlement. Her voice was matter of fact, the pain of that day long since buried. Samuel's expression tightened. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. They worked from dawn until dusk each day. Willow surprised the hired men with her strength and knowledge, showing them which trees would make the best timber, which stones would hold against the wind. She worked alongside them, ignoring their initial wariness until they began to accept her presence and even seek her advice. Samuel worked as hard as any of them, his broad shoulders and strong hands belying his educated background. He had a vision for the place that went beyond mere survival. He wanted to create something beautiful as well as functional. As the weeks passed, Willow's cabin took shape, a solid structure with a stone foundation, 2 rooms and windows that caught the morning light. Samuel insisted on proper glass for the windows, a wooden floor rather than packed earth, and a sturdy door with a proper lock. "This is better than most married couples have," Willow observed as they inspected the nearly finished cabin. "You'll be here through winter blizzards and summer storms," Samuel replied. "It needs to be solid." The first snow fell just as the cabin was completed. The hired men departed for their own homes, promising to return in spring to help with the main house. Willow moved into her new home with a sense of wonder, arranging her few possessions with care. That evening, Samuel brought over a housewarming gift, a small rocking chair he had crafted himself during the evenings. "Every home needs a place to sit and think," he said, placing it near the fireplace. Willow ran her hand over the smooth wood, touched beyond words. "Thank you." Samuel stayed for a simple meal of rabbit stew she had prepared. They sat by the fire afterward, discussing plans for spring planting, which vegetables would thrive, where to place the garden for maximum sun. "We should fence the north side," Willow advised. "Deer come through there regularly." Samuel nodded, making another note in his book. In the firelight, his features seemed softer, his usual intensity mellowed to a quiet confidence that Willow found increasingly compelling. "May I ask you something personal?" she ventured. Samuel looked up, surprised. Willow rarely initiated personal conversation. "Of course. You said you were in the army, then practiced law. Why leave that behind?" Samuel was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "The war changed me. I joined believing in the cause, ending slavery, preserving the Union. And I still believe that was right, but the things I saw, the things I did." He shook his head. "Afterward, law seemed a way to restore order, to believe in rules again. But it didn't work. I was good at it. Too good, perhaps. I could make arguments that won cases regardless of what was right." He met her eyes. "I defended a man who had beaten his Sioux wife nearly to death, got him acquitted because she wasn't considered a legal person under the law. The next month he killed her." Willow's breath caught. "So you left." "I couldn't be part of that system anymore. I had saved some money, enough to start fresh somewhere new." He gestured to the cabin around them. "Somewhere I could build something honest with my own hands." The vulnerability in his confession touched something deep in Willow. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that Samuel might be exactly what he appeared, a man seeking redemption through honest work. Winter settled over the ridge with a ferocity that tested their preparations. Heavy snow isolated them from town for weeks at a time. Samuel had built a sturdy shelter for himself, not as complete as Willow's cabin, but adequate for the season, with a stone fireplace and solid walls. They established a routine, meeting at Willow's cabin in the mornings to share breakfast and plan the day's work, then again in the evening for dinner and conversation. During the long winter nights, they talked. Samuel had brought books, histories, novels, poetry, and sometimes read aloud while Willow worked on moccasins or repaired clothing. He never commented on her moments of silence when grief for her mother washed over her, but simply continued reading until she was ready to engage again. In turn, Willow shared stories her mother had taught her, Comanche legends about the stars, the animals, the changing seasons. Samuel listened with genuine interest, sometimes asking questions that showed he was truly absorbing the lessons embedded in the tales. One night, as a blizzard howled outside, Willow found herself speaking of her childhood, the early years when her father had still been with them, before he returned east, promising to send for them once he was established. He wrote letters at first, she said softly. Sent money occasionally. Then the letters came less often and finally stopped. My mother never said a bad word against him, even at the end. Did you ever try to find him? Samuel asked. Willow shook her head. What would be the point? He made his choice. Perhaps he didn't know how to navigate bringing a Comanche wife and half-Comanche daughter into his world, Samuel suggested. Fear makes people abandon what matters most. Is that why you never married? Willow asked boldly. Fear. Samuel's eyes widened in surprise at her directness, then he laughed softly. Touché, but no, not exactly fear. I was engaged once before the war. Elizabeth Porter, daughter of my father's business associate, a proper match. What happened? I went to war, came back different. She wanted the young man who left ambitious, eager to please, ready to take his place in Chicago society. His smile was tinged with old sadness. I couldn't be that man anymore, so you chose to be alone instead. I chose to be true to myself instead, he corrected gently. Being alone was a consequence, not the goal. The blizzard raged for 3 days, forcing Samuel to stay in Willow's cabin rather than risk the short but dangerous trek to his shelter. They maintained propriety. Samuel slept on a pallet near the fire while Willow took the small bedroom, but the enforced proximity shifted something between them. A comfort developed, a sense of partnership that transcended their business arrangement. When the storm finally broke, leaving a brilliant blue sky and pristine white landscape, they stood together in the doorway, surveying the transformed world. It's beautiful, Samuel breathed, the air so cold it crystallized his words. My mother said snow cleanses the world, gives it a fresh start, Willow replied. Like your new beginning here. Samuel turned to look at her, something unreadable in his expression. Our new beginning, he corrected softly. Spring arrived in fits and starts warm days followed by sudden freezes, muddy thaws giving way to unexpected snow flurries. But gradually, inexorably, the land awakened. The hired men returned as promised, and work began on Samuel's house and the garden plots. Willow found herself watching Samuel when he wasn't aware the concentrated set of his jaw when he was solving a problem, the gentle way he handled new seedlings, the quiet authority he displayed with the workers. He never raised his voice, never belittled, but somehow commanded respect through competence and fairness. For his part, Samuel increasingly sought Willow's company beyond their work discussions. He brought wildflowers he'd found while checking their property boundaries, asked her to join him for walks to observe the returning birds, sought her opinion on matters beyond her designated responsibilities. The townsfolk of Hot Springs remained divided on Samuel Everett and his unusual arrangement with the half-Comanche woman. Some, like Wilson and his friends, openly disapproved and spread ugly rumors. Others, seeing the quality of the emerging ranch and hearing of Samuel's fair dealing, adopted a wait-and-see attitude. A few, particularly those who had been kind to Willow's mother, occasionally brought supplies or stopped by with information about available livestock or equipment. By midsummer, Samuel's house was completed, a handsome 2-story structure of stone and timber that commanded a view of the entire valley. The garden Willow had planned produced an abundance of vegetables, and their first small herd of cattle grazed on the rich grass of the northern meadow. On the day the last worker departed, leaving them truly alone on their growing ranch for the first time, Samuel invited Willow to dinner in his new home. To celebrate what we've accomplished, he explained. Willow arrived wearing the one nice dress she owned, a simple blue cotton her mother had made for special occasions. She'd left her hair loose, the way her mother had worn hers for ceremonial gatherings. Samuel met her at the door, dressed in clean trousers and a pressed white shirt. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her, a reaction that sent an unexpected flutter through Willow's stomach. "You look beautiful," he said simply, stepping aside to let her enter. The interior of the house reflected Samuel's character, practical but with touches of elegance. Books lined shelves in the main room, a large fireplace dominated one wall, and the furniture was sturdy but well-crafted. Windows on 3 sides captured light and views, making the space feel larger than it was. "It's wonderful," Willow said sincerely. "You've created a true home." "We've created it," Samuel corrected. "Every decision was influenced by your knowledge." He had prepared a special meal: venison he had hunted himself, vegetables from their garden, and even a small cake made with the wild strawberries Willow had harvested. As they ate, Samuel seemed unusually nervous, starting conversations then letting them trail off, his eyes frequently darting to Willow's face then away again. Finally, after they had finished the meal and were enjoying coffee by the fire, he cleared his throat. "Willow, I need to discuss something with you." She tensed immediately, years of disappointment making her wary. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong." He set down his cup. "The opposite, in fact. The ranch is thriving beyond my expectations. Your expertise has been invaluable." "I'm glad," she said cautiously. "Our arrangement has worked well," he continued, "but I find myself, that is, I've been considering." He stopped, took a deep breath, and started again. "I value your partnership more than I can express." Willow waited, uncertain where he was heading. "What I'm trying to say, rather poorly, is that my feelings for you have grown beyond our business agreement." Samuel finally looked directly at her, vulnerability plain in his expression. "I care for you, Willow, deeply." The words hung in the air between them. Willow sat perfectly still, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "If you don't share these feelings, nothing will change about our arrangement," Samuel hurried to add. "Your position here is secure regardless, but I would be honored if you would consider a different kind of partnership." "Are you proposing marriage?" Willow asked bluntly, needing absolute clarity. "Yes." Samuel's voice was steady now. "I am." Willow stood abruptly, moving to the window to look out at the land they had cultivated together. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions: hope, fear, disbelief. "Why?" she asked without turning. Samuel joined her at the window, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Because I love who you are, your strength, your wisdom, your resilience. Because when I imagine my future on this land, I cannot picture it without you by my side, not as my employee but as my equal, my partner in all things." Willow turned to face him. "Do you understand what you're asking, what marrying me would mean?" "I do," he said solemnly. "I know the world will judge us harshly. I know there will be difficulties I cannot fully comprehend being white, but I also know that what we've built here is worth fighting for and that my life is immeasurably better with you in it." Tears filled Willow's eyes. I never allowed myself to hope for this." Samuel tentatively reached for her hand. "You don't need to answer now. Take time to—" "Yes," Willow interrupted, her voice stronger than she expected. "My answer is yes." The joy that transformed Samuel's face was like sunrise breaking over the hills. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her fingers. "May I?" he began hesitantly. Willow closed the distance between them, reaching up to touch his face. "Yes," she whispered again. His kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that matched the intensity building within her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you this," he said softly. "I will build you a world where you belong completely, where you never have to choose between your heritages, where you are valued for exactly who you are." Willow's heart swelled with emotions she had never allowed herself to feel. "We will build it together," she corrected him. They were married 2 weeks later by a circuit riding preacher who asked no questions about Willow's background. The ceremony was simple, held on the ridge overlooking their land, with only a few witnesses: Jenkins, who had softened his position as the ranch prospered, a Lakota family who traded regularly with Willow, and 2 of the hired workers who had come to respect both Samuel and Willow during the building. Willow wore a dress of cream-colored cotton, embellished with beadwork in the Comanche tradition. Around her neck hung her mother's necklace. Samuel wore a new suit ordered from Rapid City, his usual practical demeanor giving way to visible emotion as they exchanged vows. That night, as husband and wife, they discovered each other with tenderness and growing passion. Willow, who had never known gentle touch from a man, found in Samuel's embrace a sanctuary she had never imagined possible. For his part, Samuel worshipped her body with reverence, his whispered words of love healing wounds she had carried since childhood. In the morning light, lying in his arms, Willow felt truly at peace for the first time in her memory. "I never thought I would find this," she confessed. "Happiness. Belonging." Samuel traced the curve of her cheek with his fingertips. "You belong here with me, on this land, never doubt that." Not everyone shared their joy. When they rode into Hot Springs together the following week to purchase supplies, Wilson and his friends confronted them outside the general store. "So you've gone and done it," Wilson spat, blocking their path. "Married a half-breed, disgraced yourself completely." Samuel's arm tightened around Willow's waist, but his voice remained calm. "Mr. Wilson, I suggest you step aside and keep your opinions to yourself." "Or what?" Wilson sneered. "You think because you've built some fancy ranch you're better than the rest of us. That squaw will bring you nothing but trouble." Before Samuel could respond, Willow stepped forward. "My name," she said clearly, "is Mrs. Willow Everett, and you will address me with respect or not at all." Wilson's face darkened with rage. He reached for her arm, but Samuel moved with the lightning quickness Willow had witnessed before, catching Wilson's wrist in a grip that made the other man wince. "Touch my wife," Samuel said softly, dangerously, "and it will be the last thing you do." A crowd had gathered, watching the confrontation with mixed reactions. To Willow's surprise, Jenkins pushed through to stand beside them. "Let it be, George," the store owner said firmly. "The Everetts are good customers and good neighbors. Their business is their own." Wilson yanked his arm free, glaring at all of them. "You'll regret this," he snarled before stalking away, his friends trailing behind him. "Thank you," Willow said to Jenkins once the tension had dissipated. The older man shrugged uncomfortably. "Your mother was a good woman. She deserved better than she got from this town. Maybe you'll get what she didn't." That winter brought new challenges and deeper joys. Samuel expanded the ranch, adding a sturdy barn and corrals for the growing herd of cattle. Willow's garden had yielded enough to preserve for the cold months, and her knowledge of local plants supplemented their stored provisions. They established a routine as husband and wife that honored both their cultural traditions. Samuel read aloud in the evenings. Willow taught him Comanche songs. They shared the work according to their strengths rather than prescribed roles. Samuel handled the heavy construction while Willow managed the accounts. She tracked game for hunting while he negotiated cattle sales in town. As spring approached, Willow realized she was pregnant. She told Samuel on a clear February morning as they walked the perimeter of their property, checking for damage after a heavy snow. Samuel stopped in his tracks, joy and concern battling in his expression. "A baby, are you certain?" Willow nodded, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "My mother taught me the signs. It will come with the first harvest." Samuel gathered her in his arms, his cheek pressed against her hair. "I am the happiest man alive," he murmured, "and the most terrified." Willow understood his fear. A child of their union would face the same prejudices she had, perhaps worse for being even more visibly mixed in heritage. "We will protect this child," she said with fierce determination. "It will know both worlds but belong completely to ours." "Yes," Samuel agreed, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Our world, the one we've built together." As her pregnancy progressed, Willow found unexpected support from several quarters. The Lakota family who had attended their wedding brought traditional medicines and offered wisdom about childbirth. A few women from Hot Springs, initially cautious but gradually warming to the prosperous and respectable Mrs. Everett, shared patterns for baby clothes and practical advice. Samuel became even more protective, insisting on accompanying Willow whenever she went to town, expanding their house to include a nursery, and reading every book on childbirth and infant care he could obtain. Wilson and his allies maintained their hostility, but as the Everett Ranch prospered, bringing business and stability to the region, their voices became increasingly marginalized. Samuel's fair dealing and Willow's knowledge created a place that commanded respect despite prejudice. In late September, as the harvest was being gathered, Willow went into labor. The Lakota woman, Swift Deer, served as midwife, with Samuel pacing anxiously outside until the baby's first cry pierced the evening air. Their son was perfect, a blend of both parents, with Willow's dark eyes and Samuel's strong chin. They named him Thomas, after Samuel's father, with a Comanche second name, Paka, meaning arrow, to honor Willow's heritage. As Willow held their son in the golden light of sunset, Samuel sitting beside them with his arm protectively around both, she felt a circle completing. Her mother had died believing Willow would always be caught between worlds, belonging nowhere. Yet here she was, firmly rooted in a place and a love that accepted all of who she was. "He's beautiful," Samuel whispered, gently touching their son's tiny hand. "Perfect. He is our bridge," Willow said softly, "between all the worlds that made him." Thomas grew into a strong, curious child, adored by both parents. Samuel taught him to read early, filling their home with books and knowledge. Willow shared her mother's stories and wisdom about the land. The boy straddled both heritages with an ease neither of his parents had known, proud of his Comanche blood and his father's values alike. The ranch prospered beyond their early hopes. Samuel's business acumen combined with Willow's knowledge of the land created an operation that other ranchers came to study and emulate. They hired workers without regard to race. White, Lakota, and mixed-blood men worked side by side, judged only on their skills and character. 3 years after Thomas's birth, Willow gave birth to twin girls Sarah and Kimmy, completing their family. The Everett children grew up in a home where both cultures were honored, where their mixed heritage was presented as strength rather than burden. As the years passed, the town of Hot Springs gradually changed as well. Newer settlers, attracted by the hot springs and the growing cattle industry, brought different attitudes. The railroad's arrival in 1886 further transformed the area, bringing tourists and prosperity. Wilson and his kind found themselves increasingly outnumbered by those who judged a person by their character rather than their bloodline. 10 years after they first met, Samuel and Willow stood on the ridge where he had proposed, watching their children play in the meadow below. Their ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres, with a reputation for quality stock and fair dealing that extended throughout the territory. "You remember what you promised me?" Willow asked, leaning against her husband's solid strength. "That first night after I accepted your proposal." Samuel smiled, drawing her closer. "That I would build you a world where you belong completely." "You did," she said softly. "We did." "I had no idea then how much that world would grow," Samuel replied, his gaze on their children, "or how rich it would become." That evening, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch of their home, watching the stars emerge. Samuel took Willow's hand, his thumb tracing the calluses earned through years of shared work. "I've been thinking about expanding again," he said thoughtfully. "Not the ranch itself, but what we do here." "In what way?" Willow asked. "A school," Samuel explained. "For children like ours, mixed heritage or full native, who need education but not at the cost of losing their culture." Willow's heart swelled with love for this man who continually sought to build rather than destroy, to include rather than exclude. "My mother would have loved that idea." "I thought we could name it after her," Samuel suggested. "The Morning Star School." Tears filled Willow's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "A place where children can be fully themselves, a bridge between worlds." "Not between," Samuel corrected gently. "A new world altogether, one that honors all that came before but isn't limited by it." Willow leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment washing through her. From the painful day she had lost her mother, believing herself utterly alone and unwanted in any world. To this moment of complete belonging, the journey seemed both impossible and inevitable. "I love you," she said simply, "for seeing me when no one else did." Samuel pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I love you for showing me how to build something that matters." They sat together as night fully descended, the ranch quiet around them, secure in the knowledge that they had indeed created something unique, a place where a half-Comanche woman and a former Union soldier had transcended the limitations of their time to forge a world where both could flourish, where their children could grow proud of all aspects of their heritage, where difference was strength rather than division. And in that world of their own making, they had found a love neither had believed possible, one that bridged cultures, healed wounds, and created a legacy that would endure long after them, changing not just their own lives but the lives of generations to come.